Hi, Manna family. Want to talk with you today about money, and more specifically about debt. The American humorist Ogden Nash once said, "Debts are pleasant to acquire, not so pleasant to retire." You know, the book of Proverbs has an enormous amount to say about money. The Bible doesn't forbid debt, but it strongly discourages debt and gives us enormous warnings about debt because debt is dangerous. Debt is an obligation to repay. When I borrow money, I am promising to repay that money back. And if I don't do that, I have become a thief and I have stolen that money. Solomon said it so clearly in Proverbs 22:7 when he said, "The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower becomes the lender's slave." That's very strong language, that when you borrow money, you become a slave to the lender. That's very, very sobering. There was an old bumper sticker that people used to have on their cars back in the 80s and 90s, and it said, I owe, so off to work I go." And it might be cute, but that's really a statement of bondage, not a statement of freedom, because it says I'm obligated to pay that debt. You know, debt has been a problem for the human society for literally thousands of years. God commanded ancient Israel to institute a year of Jubilee, which meant every 50 years, all debts were wiped clean and everybody started over. So if you were going to loan somebody money in year one, it was a 49-year arrangement. But if you loaned them money in year 49, it was a one-year arrangement, because in 1 year, the year of Jubilee would come and those debts would be wiped clean. Back in medieval periods, we had debtors' prisons, which were literally locked workhouses in some cases, and you would literally work off the debt you owed until you paid it back. And so that was obviously a pretty sobering way to deal with debt. Today we have bankruptcy laws that allow people to restructure debt or legally default on that debt. So a much more, I think, humane way to accomplish that. Debt is dangerous because debt presumes on the future. When I borrow money, I'm assuming that I will have income required to pay that money back, which may or may not be. So we need to be taking on debt extremely carefully. Not all debt is created equal. You know, most of us own a home and we borrow money on a mortgage to pay that debt off, but the home is collateral for that debt. That's fairly safe debt. On the other hand, if you take vacations and you put them on credit cards and it takes you 4 or 5 years to pay that credit card back, that's a very expensive form of debt with no collateral affiliated with that. Maybe the best form of debt, if there is such a thing, is if you're borrowing money to do something productive with it, like buy a business that in fact can generate enough income to pay the debt off and make you a profit as well. So there are many different kinds of debt, and not all debts are our fault, although many come as a result of our inability or unwillingness to delay gratification. You know, we live in a culture today that's very comfortable with debt. I want it now, I haven't saved the money for it, but I'm going to put it on a credit card so I get the pleasure today of owning this, but then I have pain tomorrow in paying it back. So one of the problems with debt is it's pleasure today, but it's pain down the road. You know, it's buy now and pay later. Let me try this one on you. Pray now, buy later, and maybe pay less, or maybe you don't need it at all. One of the great joys of trusting the Lord is when you pray about purchasing, the Lord may provide that for you and meet your needs in ways you weren't expecting without any debt at all. So debt feeds our need for instant gratification. And one of the fruits of the Spirit, of course, is self-control. So I'm going to encourage you to pray before you buy, especially on credit card or debt, and ask the Lord maybe if He's got another way to provide for your needs, because He's promised to meet our needs. But of course, He didn't promise to meet our wants in our time, but our needs in His time. Just to give you a little perspective, right now, as of December 31, 2019, about 190 million Americans have credit card debt. The average family household has 4 credit cards. The average balance is $8,398. And they pay about pretty close to $1,600 of interest on that debt. So it's a very, very high interest rate. I think it'd be much better if we could earn that kind of interest than pay that kind of interest. So at the end of the day, Scripture warns us about debt. It doesn't forbid it, but it says be careful. And in any and all cases, whether we have a medical emergency that causes us to go in debt through no fault of our own, or whether we've incurred the debt because we just didn't discipline ourselves, the plan is always the same. Number one, pray for wisdom. Ask the Lord to show you what to do because He owns it all. Number two, seek competent counsel from someone who can help. Number three, make a plan to pay it back. You know, there's an old saying that says, no debt, no danger. The older I get, the more sense that makes. Remember, God designed us to do life together,